This will take a second. Okay, we are live. I heard somebody get a notification there. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the flip side. I am Sean Dodson, your host as ever. This is your non-PC beer drinking, thrill of the chase talking. So I'm getting some feedback here. Hold on. So again, guys, welcome to the flip side, your non-PC beer drinking, thrill of the chase talking show. And I am your host, as always, Sean Dodson, and I want to welcome my good friend, Decall Thomas, who always likes to join me on these shows. And also want to join a returning guest, Mike Davis, also known as M. Davis 19 from Harry's Forum. So say hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
And we also want to welcome, once again, returning guest, doesn't need much of an introduction, but Dal Neitzel of the Thrill of the Chase Forum. So Dale, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
You guys are like superstars of the Fenn.
Exactly.
We're just taking him a little too literally, I guess, when he tells us what to do.
Yeah. Well, again, I have to preempt this show that, guys, none of us are experts in the chase. We are not the authority. All of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is just basically our opinions. But we definitely are going to have fun tonight and talking about a subject called Why is Forrest Fenn's poem so difficult to solve? So I kind of, Decall and I have been talking back and forth a lot about, confirmation bias, coincidences, certainty, and no consensus in the chase on really anything after 9 years or so in this. So we were talking about doing a show centered around those four or five C's, I like to call them. And we were asking, what the heck should we call this video? And I saw a thread over on Harry's site that was titled, Why is the poem so difficult to solve? So I kind of hijacked that thread title to put into our, the show's topic tonight, because I thought it was a good title and there was some good discussion over on Harry's about that. And if you haven't, seen that thread, you can go over there. It's not in the members only, it's in the general chat, and you can watch that if you're not a member there. But I highly suggest, if you're not a member, come over there and join us. So I kind of want to just open this up to our panel members to kind of get their opinion on why they believe Forrest Fenn's poem is so difficult to solve. So see, as we've got 4 Ds here, Dodson, Decall, Davis, and Dal. We'll just go alphabetically and we'll let Dale start. So Dale, I'll let you start. Why do you think this thing is so difficult?
I have an answer for that. I've been thinking about this, and it's clear to me that the reason this is so difficult to solve is because Forrest is a very difficult person. I mean, he's not a simple guy. His whole life is complex. Every time you talk to him, he doesn't talk in a straight line. He doesn't say what's on his mind precisely. He weaves around. And this poem is exactly the same way, and I'm sure that the solution to this poem is exactly the same.
Huh. Nice.
I like it. And Davis, what do you think?
Well, it's so difficult to solve because there's no confirmation. I mean, you're working your way through the poem. You've got no idea whether or not you've got any part of it right until you put boots on the ground, walk to the very end. Either the treasure's there or it's not. It's always not. Let's face it, it's always not so far. There's absolutely no confirmation that you're on the right path anywhere, that you've got the right state even for starting out. And that's why it's so hard to solve. Forrest didn't put any confirmations along the way into it. And I think that's the main thing that makes it so difficult to solve.
Yeah. And Decall?
Yeah, I mean, M. Davis and we used to argue about this subject quite a bit, in years past. And I have to admit, M. Davis was right about that. But
Oh my God! Stop the presses.
well.
There's the explosion you're talking about, Dale.
Yes. And the eye-opening moment was when we realized that every single person in this game has confirmation bias, because none of us have any source of truth other than Forrest Fenn, and most of us believe that he hasn't shared anything to indicate success by anyone. We know that somebody is successful in solving it. We just have no idea who that person is or what part they have solved right, what line of the poem is in the neighborhood or solved correctly. We really have absolutely nothing. So every single person in this game is suffering from some sort of confirmation bias, because you can't have a solve and not have confirmation bias. That's it. Basically, you believe in your solve, so therefore you have confirmation bias. Now, it is possible that somebody has confirmation bias and they're still correct. And I'm not anxious to prove to anyone that I'm correct. I much prefer to prove that I'm wrong so I can quit playing, which I haven't been able to do either, you know.
Put him out of his misery, Forrest.
Right. Put us all out of our misery, or this lead searcher, please put us out of our misery. But I think all three of your statements, you know, are all spot on. And I think most of the chat room would probably agree with all of us that the biggest thing I think Mike is saying is, yes, we have absolutely no confirmation. None of us do. We have nothing. And confirmation, really, I believe the only confirmation any of us will ever get is finding that treasure chest. That is the only real factual confirmation we will ever have that we've got any of this absolutely right. And it's like I've said before, we've got no sign out there that says, welcome to Warm Waters Hall. Welcome to the home of Brown. Welcome, or here's the blaze, you know? I mean, there's no signs or anything out there that tells us that. You know, it's not like, you know, and Mike Cowlings puts a lot of effort in putting to some of his puzzles and his treasure hunts together, but you get somewhat of confirmation along the road that you've got something right as you go through that, because he'll say, okay, you got it right, you're moving on to the next one. And you have a confirmation. Yeah. You
see in his games, in other games, you see like a full paragraph or a full sentence in English, perfectly punctuated and perfectly written out. I mean, that's pretty dang good confirmation. But we haven't found a full. I mean, we found what's Cowling's favorite one? Find the wheel or
try the wheel.
Try the wheel. Yeah, I mean, that's not even a sensible statement. Sure, they find that alignment in the poem, but it reminds me of like Bible code where they just find any random gibberish, you know, and make it into a sentence, you know.
But does that, let me ask this question to you guys, but does that feel like, you know, Forrest Fenn saying, try to simplify if you can? Does that feel like the aha moment we're supposed to have, like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? Does that really seem like that simple thing, Dale? I mean, what do you think, Dale?
I think all the people that keep writing me and telling me that they found the chest must be onto something, because I get roughly 50 of those, you know, a week. And
oh man. And
I think somebody somewhere must be a lot closer than me. You know, I can't help but believe that, you know, that somebody's got to be luckier than me in this thing. But I agree. You know, it's why most people end up quitting, I think, is because they have no clue whether or not they're headed in the right direction or not. And it's unfortunate.
Hey, Dale, I always liken it to like faith in God or something.
Oh,
we're all supposed to believe in God, but we don't see him. We don't have any tangible evidence.
But there are pictures of the treasure.
Sure.
Pictures of the treasure chest.
Yeah. And we
Google
know
Earth.
And we know people have actually seen it. I mean, Creighton, his Forrest's nephew, hefted it up off of the kitchen table in Forrest's house and carried it to the vault. He did that a couple of times. He agreed that it's about 40 pounds. He did that and he put it on the kitchen table, and Forrest would go through some of the stuff that's on it, that's in the chest.
I'm talking more about kind of like faith in the poem. Okay. So like all we have is this sort of good feelings about the poem and these natural ideas about the poem. And we're supposed to have faith that we have the right answer. And that's almost like that's what Forrest Fenn is expecting of us, to just go by faith and just land on the perfect spot at some future point. It's kind of crazy.
Or maybe he never really did intend it to take this long. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe not.
Probably not. Yeah, probably right.
Maybe he thought it would have been solved pretty easily by somebody, 9 years ago.
Yeah, I've talked about that before in posts, I think here and back on Chase Chat, about how Forrest is too close to the problem. I mean, he sees the solution. To him, it's straightforward. To the rest of us, well, we just can't figure it out. And he can't understand why we can't figure it out. He probably thinks we're all a bunch of idiots.
It's so simple and obvious to him because he's the architect. He's like, you dummies, the blaze is right there. Or, Homer Brown is right here. He's just like, why can't you guys see this? But you're right. He's so close to it. He's the architect. It's blatantly obvious to him, but not to us.
Yeah. And that's for sure. I mean, he's told me on a number of occasions that I don't know what I'm doing and I have no imagination. So, what am I supposed to do?
Sounds like a tough friend to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Forrest.
Well, M. Davis, one of our classic arguments was over the get back in the box or think outside the box. You really started it off by publishing that box with all the common
failure box,
common failure. Yeah, that's your correct name for it. And you put Yellowstone in there, and you put brown bears or brown trout in there, and you put Madison Junction in there.
No, not Madison Junction, no. But it's Yellowstone, isn't it?
Sure. And I don't want to. I haven't looked at it in a while. But you call those things low-hanging fruit, and I'm not really trying to stir up the argument again. But Forrest has said get back in the box, and then but it's the whole idea of confirmation bias still applies. And in fact,
my whole point with the failure box was all that stuff is like chapters in The Thrill of the Chase, and I don't see Fenn talking about the hiding place in that book. I don't think he's going to do that. Yeah. Obviously it's been this long. It's this hard to find the treasure. He's not obvious about where it's hidden. So I don't think when he's talking about Yellowstone, he's talking about where he hid the treasure. When he's talking about brown trout and fishing, I don't think he's talking about he hid it near one of his fishing holes or anything like that. I think those are all going to be rabbit holes to nowhere. And those are all the things I threw in the failure box, hot springs, things like that. I don't think he talks about where the treasure is. I don't think he's ever mentioned anything about where the treasure is hidden. But people, read his books, people talk to him, and they assume what he's talking about is going to be some kind of clue or hint, and they go off on some tangent, rabbit hole, whatever. I think the only hint he's given us is in the poem. That's it. I think the rest of it's just, road to nowhere.
Well, a good thing you're saying, Mike, is that, all that stuff that you put in that box were things that were talked about in the actual Thrill of the Chase. And Forrest says immediately following the poem, there are also other subtle clues sprinkled in the stories. And I think you and many others have said that if this is supposed to be a subtle clue, and subtle is defined as something so delicate and precise as to be difficult to analyze or to identify. So if it's supposed to be a subtle clue, then things like Yellowstone or trout or fishing in general, he never mentions brown trout anywhere in the Thrill of the Chase book. I mean, let's just make that clear. He talks about brown in other ways, but he never mentions brown trout. But those things would not be subtle. They would be very obvious things. Subtle things could be like, I mean, let's talk. I mean, the whole, Robert Redford never wrote a book. That could be a subtle hint. I mean, I don't know. I can't prove that is or not. Or the fact that, there's 9 clues. Yeah, there you go. Outlaw Trail. My dad has a copy and I can't get it, but I'm trying to find my own personal copy of that hardbound. Thank you for showing that. I can't find one. I don't want to pay $1 million online to get it. But
is it worth it? I'll put mine on eBay tomorrow.
It might be. I bet you if you put it on there with the tag of Forrest Fenn Outlaw Trail, it probably might get $600.
You know what I think is strange?
You got to share 10% of your sales with me now because I told you.
I think you see about 40% of the whole community going directly towards everything Forrest Fenn has said, and you see another 40% going direct opposite direction of everything Forrest Fenn has said. And maybe the other, what does that leave? 20% are kind of crazy anyway. They don't know where they're going. But I fall into that camp of let's prove what he is talking about right or wrong first. And I don't know if that has anything to do with confirmation. I guess we're looking for a true source of truth or some biblical answer to this poem. How do we solve the first stanza? How do we solve the second stanza?
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I want to hit something up real quick. Dale Iron Will's in the chat room. He wanted to say hi to you. I don't know if you can see the chat, but he did say hi. So guys, if you have a question of Dale, because he can't see the chat, I don't know if Mike can. I know Decall's got it up.
I can see it, but I'm having trouble following it and following the conversation here. Yeah. So I'm not as much practice at this as you guys.
Mike Davis's screen name on YouTube is, I think, Omega Geek 64. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So if you have a question of Mike and you want him to see it, you can type in at the @ Omega Geek 64, and that'll be his. And then if you have a question of Dale, you can put it to the flip side or Decall or Omega Geek 64, and we'll see it. And then Steve Gahagan mentioned something in here. He said at the flip side, I'm assuming Forrest Fenn, also said there's nothing in Thrill of the Chase that will lead you directly. Steve, I don't think I've ever seen that or him ever mention that. I could be wrong, but I don't think I've ever heard him say that. And Dale, I cut you off there. Sorry.
I thought I saw something similar to that. Maybe he's paraphrasing.
It does sound familiar.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question about the directness of the clues. I mean, why do the clues have to be direct? If, for instance, say 6 out of 9 stories in the book mention Yellowstone, why can't that be a clue as to where we should be looking?
Maybe it's an indirect clue. Maybe the yellow is the important part, or the stone is the important part. But I just don't know.
Yeah. Why do you say that? Why do you say that yellow is important or stone is important as opposed to say just that section of Montana is important?
Well, for a couple of reasons. I've never believed he hid the treasure that far away from home. It's just my own personal belief, my own confirmation bias, maybe. I think it's closer to home, for one. I've never believed it's further away than, say, central Colorado, and it's probably even closer than that, I would think. But Yellowstone is there's just too many people there. I mean, it's people crawling all over that place all the time. It
doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it wrong.
No, but I would disagree with you about even about there's people crawling all over that place. For instance, I like to go there. I always tell people this: go there before school is out in the spring, and go there after school is out in September. In June. I got that backwards, but you know what I mean. And on the cusps, and when people aren't taking vacations, and the place is dead. I mean, it's a big place. I would never go there in the middle of the summer and look for anything. I mean, you stand in line, and if anybody sees a moose, traffic stops for 10 miles on the road while somebody in the front is watching a moose. No, you're absolutely right. But the rest of the time of the year, and it doesn't have to be in the park itself. I mean,
that's true.
His cabins were not in the park. His
Right.
cabins were in West Yellowstone, right? You couldn't be much closer to the park. He was 30 feet from the park, but nonetheless, he wasn't in the park.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to necessarily be in the park. And besides that, a lot of the stories in the book are not about in Yellowstone himself. He writes about and shows us pictures of areas where he used to bicycle, or Red Canyon, where he pretended to be Lewis and Clark. I mean, there's all kinds of references to not necessarily right directly in the park. Just that area is so close to him. But I'm not trying to argue for that place. I guess I'm just trying to argue against you that it has to be in Santa Fe.
I'm used to people arguing against me, so that's fine.
I am too.
I'm well trained in that.
But what I was getting at was subtle hints. That was just an example. Yellowstone. Maybe it's the yellow or the stone part that's important, but it could be any chapter in The Thrill of the Chase, or any paragraph in The Thrill of the Chase, or some of the book titles in important literature, or something about them. Something subtle. But he's not beating us over the head with it like he is with Yellowstone, or like he is with his trout fishing, or his Vietnam experiences, or other stuff like that. There's nothing subtle about any of that stuff, and yet people are building whole solutions out of that. And I think that's where the failure box comes in. So that's just my opinion.
Well, I think what really revolves around what makes this so difficult, again, is there is no confirmation. We all agree that we get no confirmation. There's no roadsides out there. So we're constantly looking for confirmation. We're trying to look through the book. We're trying to look through the 198 scrapbooks. We're trying to look through all the interviews. We're trying to look through all the writings that Forrest Fenn has put out there to try and find those subtle clues that will pop up in our brain that will point to the correct geographical area that we think that Warm Waters Halt resides in, or what Warm Waters Halt is, or whatever else. And what we end up finding is we find a plethora of coincidences. We find things in the book that will relate to something outside, in the geographical world that makes sense to us. And then we'll find another coincidence, and we'll find another coincidence. And I think if we're set around trying to find coincidences, or we're set on trying to find confirmation, what we end up finding is coincidences. And this is what I'm going to say is not meant to beat up Decall and Dale here. And Decall, you just muted yourself. I don't know if you meant to do that or not. But again, like I said in my Evolution of a Poem Purist video, that I really fell in line with the belief that Madison Junction could be where Warm Waters Halt. And it made perfect sense because it was where the Gibbons and the Fire Hall met together. They were geothermally fed rivers, so they were warm in a sense, right? Or hot where they started. So then I started going with that idea, and then I started looking for confirmations of other things. And guys, I found a plethora of things, and I think that's what we all do, is we find all these coincidences and they just stack on top of each other. And I've talked with Anagram and a few other people that have said, well, how many coincidences does it take to prove confirmation or fact? And I said, guys, I don't think any amount of coincidences will ever prove fact. It doesn't mean that one of those isn't true. I'm not saying it's not, but I don't think any amount of them will ever prove confirmation. The only confirmation we'll have is just finding the treasure. So that is, in my opinion, what makes this so difficult, is that our minds and our imaginations and our desire for confirmation leads us to all these coincidences that stack up. And guys, you can read any of the forums and read these searcher stories, and there's great searcher stories. I love reading searcher stories because you never know what's going to trip up in your own mind and lead you down a rabbit hole. But I think that's what makes this thing so difficult. And Decall, I see you bobbing your head. I don't know if you got anything to add to that, but got to unmute yourself, buddy. Hold on, buddy. You're muted. Why are you muted?
Was his wife there again? Did she?
Yeah. Can you hear me, bud? Go ahead. Dale, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
It's another question, really.
All right. Decall's unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, Dale, I mean, everybody wants to hear you. You're fantastic. And
Yeah,
M.
right.
Davis is a character.
Yeah, we're all
we
tired
like-
of the call.
But I totally agree that I call it the spectacular list. And I've heard so many different solves, and I hear their spectacular list. And like Sean said earlier, you know, my confirmation bias kicks your confirmation's ass, you know, because I have a spectacular list. And that's all I have. It's just spectacular to me, probably. A legend in my own mind, probably. But everyone feels like they have this long list of beautiful coincidences and alignments and unbelievable circumstances about their solve. And some of them are pretty good, you know. You hear about them and you say, man, that's cool. But they're still sort of black swan events, you know, that really don't link back to any form of actual confirmation or anything. They're just, they're these random coincidences that are bound to happen in nature. I mean, you'll find these random alignments everywhere in nature, in stock markets, in Bible code, in everywhere. They're everywhere. And you sure couldn't predict them. That would be masterful. But all of these alignments that we're seeing out there, they're great, but they're not necessarily lining up with what Forrest Fenn has, you know, his solution, you know, the true and correct solve. That's what we're trying to get at, right?
Hey,
Mike, what do you, or Dale, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah,
well,
go ahead, Dale.
I was just going to say, I think I'm going to be the heathen here. I've never followed. I don't think I've ever followed a coincidence. I think what my theory is: find where warm waters halt, and then look to see if there's a canyon near there that I can go down, and then, you know, I go some distance and look for something that's owned by Brown, or, you know, I mean, I've never aligned with all the stumps and, you know, in picture on page 92 or whatever it is. Have never done that. I've never gone for coincidences. I've never looked at a single scrapbook as having a single clue.
Well, Dale,
That's coming from the man who has all the scrapbooks himself.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Dale, if you're in an area that you like for other reasons and you find a field full of stumps, that might be useful to your solve. Okay.
It might be, but I probably wouldn't notice. That's how lead-headed I am.
Okay, and I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying, what the hell are we looking for? I mean, you would think that something in the book is something that we're looking for.
I agree. I agree with that. 100%.
And then and of course we can't point to the one thing that we're expecting to find, and because we don't know what's important to Forrest Fenn. But I mean, in my solve, I have this beautiful field full of stumps. You know, I also have the floating hat. I also have the Indian woman, that mini Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood, that's a very good alignment. You know, that doesn't mean it's right at all. In fact, I'm going nuts over here, wondering what do I do with all these alignments, you know?
Throw them out the window.
Throw them out the window. Yeah, you've got way too many alignments there.
Rip them up. Guys, I see a lot of questions in here, and I will get to them, guys. I'm not ignoring you guys. We're having a good conversation. Mike, did you have anything to add to that?
You just cut out a little bit. Did you asked me a question?
Did you have anything to add to that? We were going around, and Decall and Dale were going back and forth.
Well, yeah, confirmation bias. Everybody's got it. It's pretty bad, and I think even the finder's going to have it, but they're going to have the right confirmation bias. You know,
yes,
I mean, we all get out there in the field. We study our maps, find a place like, okay, this is probably where warm waters halt, and maybe this is a canyon down, and whatever. We get out there and we start looking around, and it's like, oh, look, there's a brown. There's a brown. Yeah, okay, I'm in the right place. Let's go below this brown, and so on.
Yeah.
But it's coincidence, you know. It's just feeding our confirmation bias. I mean,
And-
one of my early
confirmation.
one of my early
ahead, sorry,
songs,
Mike.
I'll share it because it's bogus. Way back at the beginning of this, before Forrest ruled out dams. Yeah, go look at it. Before Forrest ruled out dams, I thought maybe warm water halt was at the dam on Navajo Lake, and the follow the canyon down the San Juan River Canyon, follow it down, and I found a place on the San Juan River called Brown's Corner or Brown's Angle, where the river takes a sharp turn, and I thought, holy cow, this has got to be the place.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah. So I
I'll be right back. That's like 5 miles away from here. I'll be right back.
So I actually did a boots on the ground trip out there on one of my vacations, and what I found was that every square inch of the ground out there was overlaid multiple times with footprints. I mean, it's a very popular fishing area. The kids go out there to party, the high school kids and whatnot. Oil workers are out there. People are camping out there. It's like, you can't hide anything here, okay, unless you want to bury it. And if it's buried, you're never going to find it. So it's like, and then of course, Forrest ruled out dams later. So I totally gave up on that. But it was just feeding my confirmation bias. I found something named Brown below what I thought was a warm waters halt. And it's like, this has got to be the place. But it wasn't. So,
So let me just hit a couple of questions here real quick, if I can, guys. And this one comes from, wait, hold on. Let me go up here because I think there was another one. This one comes from Anon. This one's to you, Dale. And Anon says, with all the talk about lead searcher, what is your take? Do you believe someone is close, Dale?
I don't see how anybody can be close. I mean, honestly, I think we're all just running around in circles. I think we're all wish we were close. I think we're all, I think somebody's probably got the right where warm waters halt. It's just, that's sort of like asking me, I hear this question all the time. Is it going to be found this year? Well, how the hell do I know if it's going to be found? In my humble opinion, no, I don't think it's going to be found. I don't think I'm going to find it. I don't think I'm going to find it. I don't think it's going to be found this year, but I'm going to continue to look, and I'm going to have a good time while I'm out there doing it.
There you go. Absolutely. Yep. Cool. And here's another one for you, Dale, coming from Iron Will. He says, can you ask Dale how old Esmeralda is doing? Is she coming to Finbury this year?
Yeah, probably. Let's see, new engine and new transmission. And now I've got a catalytic converter I got to put in there. And my damn driver's side window won't roll down. It's always something with a 20-year-old vehicle.
Yeah. Or trucks,
And this one comes from Dale, another one for you. And this one comes from Gay Delkin, who we know is Eugene. He says to you, Dale, 5 years ago, I wrote you that I had a story that my solution was about art. And if you would post it, do you remember?
No.
What do you think about the poem being about art now? Do you think the poem is about art, Dale? This is coming from Eugene.
I think it's certainly possible, but it's nothing that I have explored myself. I mean, and that's interesting. I'm going to go home now and I'm going to look at art as a possibility. I know lots of people tie parts of the poem, particularly where warm waters halt, into some art that's hanging over there at the Cody Museum, and
art is definitely a subject. I mean, we see Forrest Fenn's doodles. We see his bronze works, his failed attempt at the buffalo, and the other ideas that, Forrest Fenn has admitted he's not much of an artist, and then he has the unspoken history of his New York art dealings and the fake art, versus, and fake is not the right way to explain it, because he sells this art, as is, and for the beauty that it is, no, regardless of who did it. And then he created artists out of several different people, so art is a part of this game. We're not sure where to apply it. I mean, art fits into my solve I won't even mention it because we'll just start in with the ridicule. But
Mike, what do you think? Do you think art is involved in this?
I think Decall Thomas has everything but the kitchen sink, and it has two goats in it. But yeah, it's just again, like I was saying, he's got a couple chapters about art in his book, so it's probably not a subtle hint. I doubt art is involved in the poem. I think the poem is art, though. I think
yes.
Fenn says he's not a great artist, and I think most people would agree with that. But he did write a poem, and it may not be great poetry, but it's certainly as treasure maps go, it's still pretty darn difficult to solve. So he accomplished what he set out to do. So yeah.
I really think the poem, I'm sorry, Sean. I think that poem is written brilliantly. I think there are many dimensions to it. I think, I don't think it was written casually. He says it wasn't written casually. He says it was very well planned and thought out. I think there's some artistic.
Every word is purposeful.
Yeah.
Every word is deliberate in that poem. Yeah.
Effort in that poem.
Eugene, I will absolutely say art is involved in the poem. Language arts.
Language arts, yeah.
That's all I'm going to leave it at that.
Punctuation.
But here's the thing, Forrest won't claim to be good at anything. He's written 9 books. He won't say he's a writer. He won't say he's a good writer. He won't even say he's a good salesman. He says, I'm a good schmoozer. He says he's not a good artist, but he's got all these wonderful things. And I dare you to stand there in front of him and tell him that's crap.
Oh yeah.
That's not going to go over well. So he's self-effacing and he's humble, but I think underneath he is an artist. He is a writer. He is a poet, in spite of the fact that he won't admit it. And
he's a hell of a salesman.
Well, he made his living. He made a hell of a nice living doing that, didn't he? I mean, it's hard to say that he's not a good salesman.
Hey, Dale,
what's his number one rule, Dale?
I don't know what you're going for. Oh,
no, he said his number one rule is it's not who you are, it's who they think you are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dale, I was going to ask you if you've been to the Fenn Galleries or whatever it's called now. I don't know.
The Matucci Gallery, yeah.
Yeah,
have you been there multiple times, Dale? Have you been there?
I went there a couple times with Forrest, and he showed us around upstairs and all around.
Gosh.
Took us in the back. When he was showing the place off, it was very early in the chase, and Gotti Schwartz was a news guy from town at that time. Now he's with NBC, but he was
out in California. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was showing Gotti around, and I hung out with him. And another time when he was showing some people around, and so I got to hang out. It was a nice tour. I got to, he talked about the things he was very proud of about that he and Peggy had put in there.
Yeah, the amount of details, and I mean, to do that landscape out back, I mean, just the amount of details in everything there, it was fascinating to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, there is some wonderful detail in the construction of those rooms, and almost every one is slightly different. I mean, he did that on purpose. You remember he had 2 little girls that were living there too. They all worked on that house together.
Sure.
They were living upstairs and making it into a gallery, converting it from being a forge, a fountain.
Yeah.
So it's your basic American story. You buy something cheap and try and turn it into something that you're proud of, and that's what they did with that place.
Yeah,
I never understood how he could sell it. To me, I don't, because I can't sell Esmeralda, so
I'll buy it. So I got another question here coming from Minotaur Marino, our friend Justin, and he says, and this is for the entire panel, and he's just wanting to get our opinion on this. He said, 9 years, hundreds of thousands of searchers. Would the panel agree with me that means it's very likely buried underground somewhere? And I'm assuming he's talking about the treasure itself. What do you think, Mike? What do you think?
See, I don't think it's buried. I hope it's not buried, because I think if it's buried, it'll never be found. At least not by any of us. Maybe someday, 100 years from now, somebody with nuclear-powered backhoe will dig it up accidentally. But we'll never find it if it's buried.
Now let me ask this back to Justin and the chat room and the panel. But when we're talking about buried, are we assuming that Forrest Fenn purposefully buried this, or that it is currently buried? Because there is a difference. So I guess it's a two-part question. Do you think Forrest Fenn purposely buried it, or intentionally, or do you think Mother Nature over time has buried it?
I'd like to add something. I mean, if we're looking in the book for some subtle hints about how is it buried or how is it hidden, and we see the woman in the room in the kiva. We see the
woman in the room in your house.
We see the woman in the room, all right.
Yeah,
we were waiting
power
for you to
strip.
go silent.
And she is a gorgeous, lovely woman. But the
Yes.
where that omega shape vase full of corn or whatever underneath the floor. I think that's a perfect example of what we should be looking for as a hint to how the treasure is concealed. He said it's concealed. He has said the word buried multiple times, and there's other shows for that concept. But I think we can look to the book for some ideas, okay? And I don't mind. I mean, I will always believe that the treasure is the 6 inches deep, just basically barely concealed, in whatever circumstances it is, whether it's rocks, whether it's grass, whether it's, leaves and trees and bark, and possibly more inches deep now after the passage of time. But I mean, it doesn't make sense to set a box full of gold out on top. So it's concealed in some manner, and probably not so accessible to bears and other animals or any animal that might disturb it or spill the contents, or that's probably not going to happen. But I think there's evidence in the book of how it's hidden.
And too far to walk, not necessarily thrill the chase. But Dale, what do you think?
I
do you
agree.
think it's buried? Do you think he purposely buried it, or do you think over time? I mean, it doesn't matter, I guess. I mean, do you think it's buried or not? I guess.
Yeah, I think it's certainly hidden under something. But I don't believe it's buried to the point you need a shovel, because he's already told us you don't need any tools, right? To get this thing. But, in terms of us never finding it, I don't think that's true if it is buried. All we have to do is find the blaze,
Yeah.
And once we find the blaze, it's directly down. So I think it can easily be hidden or buried. And it isn't so deep. We need a big shovel to dig it out. You can do it with your hands. But it's
best
obvious
to have gloves.
Yeah, it's obvious that it's concealed in some way. Otherwise, I agree. It would have been found by now. I would have found it.
And what do you think, Mike?
I don't believe it's buried. Certainly concealed. Dale makes a good point. We supposedly don't need any tools, and shovel's a tool. Concealed. Maybe even Decall's idea that is under some sort of rock slab or something you have to move aside. That's a possibility. But I really don't think it's, under more than an inch or two of dirt that's probably accumulated over time from wind and stuff falling on it and whatnot. I don't think Forrest buried it. At least
Totally.
That's my opinion.
Maybe
it's just my confirmation bias talking. Maybe that. Maybe Conway's got it right. Who knows?
Yep. Well, I go back to Scrapbook 78, Dale, on your site, where Forrest Fenn says, I had never said anyone had been within 12 feet of the treasure chest. It's highly unlikely anyone would get that close and not find it. And I had posed him an email question asking about that, and asked if he would like to update us. Here it is, 2018, 4 years later. Do you still believe that to be true? And Forrest responded by saying, better not answer that question, Sean. Sorry. And that, to me was like, what does that mean? Does that mean he does, one, like he said, he's never been back to the treasure's location, so he doesn't know? Does he think after 4 more years that Mother Nature might have, blown some weeds in there and covered it up, like he says in the the lure interview, after the whole lure video in Santa Fe. So I don't know. I tend to think that I don't think he intentionally buried it. I think he might have intentionally put it in a position, whether it was covered by rocks or in a cubby or something. And it's likely that he purposely intended Mother Nature to cover that up for him over years. Or like he said, he just doesn't know. It's possible that somebody has been that close that they should have found it and didn't. So now he's uncertain. He just doesn't know.
But he said time and time again that once you find the home of Brown, you're going to find the chest. So again, I don't think we have to see the chest. We just have to find the home of Brown. Once we find the home of Brown, so if you're within 12 feet of the home of Brown, I think you're within 12 feet of the chest. I think you will recognize the home of Brown if you see it.
So I honestly don't think I ever heard him say anything about if you found the home of Brown, you'll find the treasure. I think in the conversation with
now I'm going to have to look
with
that
the
up.
conversation with Jennifer London in the video, she asked him, who is Brown? And he said, well, if I told you that, you go directly to the treasure. I think that's the closest thing he's ever said to that. I mean, I could be wrong too. I mean, I could be completely wrong. And the chat room here and their collective intelligence will probably correct us all. Mike, I saw you kind of scratching your chin thinking about that one too, but I don't know if he's ever said anything correlated with.
I've heard the same quote that you've heard, Sean, that, if he told you, about Brown, you'd go right to the treasure, basically. That's kind of what I heard, paraphrasing. So,
and the other one was about somebody said, if I was sure about the home of Brown, could I reverse engineer and find where warm waters halt? And Forrest Fenn said, well, if you're so sure about the home of Brown, why are you concerned about, where warm waters halt? I mean, those are the two that I think, Dale, that you might be, and you may know something we don't know and go through your emails. And if that's what Forrest Fenn said, please share that with us all, because that would be a huge revelation.
It's something public. It's something public, and I'm sure it didn't come out precisely in those words. But I'll look it up, and I'll do something to make.
We're gonna hurt that lead head of yours, aren't we?
Yeah, you are.
Let me get to some more questions, guys. We got a lot of questions in here, and I know the people come into our chat room and they watch this show, and we owe them the respect to read their questions. But I've got one from Jake Faulkner here, and he just wanted to ask the panel, what do we have as far as combined boots on the ground searches? Dale, I mean, you're the most senior guy here. I mean, how many searches, boots on the ground, do you estimate you've had, I guess?
Yeah, but I only search in good weather. So number one.
That's very smart of you.
I'm a fair weather searcher. And I stopped counting at 71. But so I figure I've had another 20 since then.
Wow.
Nice. Mike?
But I know there's a lot of people who've done more than that.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people who've done more than that. I don't know. I guess it depends.
I was just going to say.
Go ahead. Finish, Dale.
I was just going to say Cynthia does 70 every year,
Well, I travel through the search area a couple times a year. So, it depends on how you define a purposeful boots on the ground search. Every time I travel through, I might take a little detour and check a few things out. I've only had 2 or 3 serious searches, but probably 3 or 4 go check something out and see if that's a possibility. And I wouldn't call myself a real serious searcher. I'm hoping to be able to do more in the future, get out there more often. So,
yeah.
I've probably been in the field, a good 15, 20 total days, spend the whole day searching, over the last few years, None last year. I didn't go last year. My wife doesn't think it's worthy of budget monies, but how about Sean? Have you answered that, Sean?
Yeah, I'm probably in about the 50 range, boots on the ground searches since 2015. Didn't get as many as I'd like to last year, but we've already had a couple this year already. So yeah, good. Now I'm going to move on to Marty Bird had a question. This goes to Dale. Why do you think the 3 books about the treasure hunt and Finn's family never mention that Finn has a nephew who is a professional treasure hunter? Obviously, we're talking about Creighton Finn here. It's a good question. How come he never mentions his nephew?
Well,
in 3 books.
He's mentioned them in a scrapbook.
Yeah.
That's on the blog, with including
Yep.
pictures. And I think he even made me put a picture of myself up there at that same place. So Creighton, it's probably Creighton's wish more than Forrest's. I would say that he mentions Creighton as much as he mentions Shiloh or his daughters or anybody else. He doesn't talk about his family much. He doesn't drag them into this thing. And
other people like the guy with the axe dragged them into this apparently.
Oh man. Yeah, that guy.
So I'm going to hit a couple more questions and we're going to talk about a little bit of a conundrum or a contradiction Forrest has. But this comes from Mr. Bean. And this goes to you again, Dale. Did you ever conduct any more research on the Tiwa Indian connections after discovering Warm Waters Halt mentioned in the oral histories?
No, not a bit. After I did that search there, I think I went back there maybe 3 or 4 times, but always just trying to make that complete that same search, looking for what I couldn't find. I never explored it any further or tried any redirection out there.
And
Besides, but let me tell you one of the reasons why I didn't. And Forrest did this publicly. I'm not telling anything that only I know. Forrest did this publicly when the Australian interview came out. I can't remember that fellow's name. I took him out there and we did the search out there, and it was on Australian TV.
Near Tres Piedras, wasn't it?
Pardon?
Near Tres Piedras, right?
Yes. And when we came back after searching there, Forrest, and he said to me, "Well, where did you go?" And I told him, and he said, not to me personally, but I was in the room, but he said to the reporter, "He doesn't know where it's at. There's no reason to follow him." He said something like, "That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard." And that,
That's fantastic. Wow.
I'd love to get a couple of beers in Forrest and just have a conversation with him. Now that would be fun. So I got another question from Marty Bird. Dale, have you ever discussed the treasure hunt with Doug Preston? Have you ever met him, discussed anything with him?
We discussed other things. We never really discussed the treasure chest. No, or the location.
With Doug Preston. Doug Preston.
No.
So you've met him before, yeah?
Yeah, I met him over at Forrest's a couple times. We went out to lunch once, but no, we didn't talk about the chest.
He seems like an interesting guy. Like,
God,
anybody can have a conversation and sit down and have dinner with Desert File. You got to be an interesting guy. Anybody heard from Desert File? He's like MIA. Mike, you were going to say something. I'm sorry. What were you going to say, Mike?
I was just talking about Preston. He writes really great books. So, he probably would be somebody that, it would be great to have lunch with him and listen to him tell stories and shoot out ideas for plot lines and stuff. That would be, I'm kind of like a frustrated writer myself. I wish I could write books like he does.
Well, and he does factual books too. I mean, he doesn't just invent fiction. He's quite a historian. He is a lot of fun to listen to. I mean, the guy in one of his books, what was the famous Spanish explorer in the Southwest? You know who I mean? This
Coronado.
Coronado. So Coronado. So he followed Coronado's trail on horseback, for like an entire spring and summer and fall. He produced that thing and wrote a book about it. He's quite a character, quite an interesting guy.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're coming up on an hour here, guys, and I want to really quickly talk about kind of what is probably one of the biggest we assume as searchers, and I say we, I'm going to say myself and Decall, because we've talked a lot about this one-on-one, probably a big contradiction that Forrest Fenn has said is it relates to a couple comments. One comes from, and you can find this, and I'll try and put the link in the description of the video below, comes from Forrest Fenn Gets Mail 9, and it comes from the fold-out map and Too Far to Walk. And this is on the front page of the Too Far to Walk. And on the front page of that Too Far to Walk book, Forrest Fenn says, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I might not get it exact, but he says in there, I warned that the path would not be direct for those who had no certainty in the location beforehand, but sure for the one who did. So Forrest Fenn talks about one should have somewhat of certainty of the location. And when he says the location, we're assuming the location that the treasure chest rests in beforehand, meaning before they ever go out there and search, because he says if you don't know where you're going, any trail will lead you there. Or if you don't know where warm waters halt, then you might as well stay home and play canasta. So the location we're assuming is the location where the treasure chest rests in. So Forrest Fenn writes that we should have somewhat of certainty of the location beforehand, so, but this also, and I'm going to switch over to my screen here. So give me a second, guys. But this goes against, and you guys can find this. This is on Forrest Fenn Gets Mail 9, and it says, you have told people to stay home unless they have solved the first clue. And Forrest Fenn responds, if you don't know where you're going, any trail will take you there. Then the next question was asked, do you expect that people will somehow, quote unquote, know for sure once they have found the first clue? Forrest Fenn responded, no. Many people have found the first clue, but they didn't know it. Until someone finds the treasure, they will not know for sure that they have discovered the first clue. Now, that seems like a huge contradiction, in my opinion. I think there's been a lot of chatter over the years, especially because that came out in late 2015, Forrest Fenn Gets Mail 9. Since then, about, oh my God, this is a huge contradiction. So I just want to go through the panel and ask you guys your opinion. Do you think that's a contradiction? Can you make any sense of that? So I'll start with Mike. Mike, what do you think of that?
Well, it's classic Fenn speak. It doesn't seem to make any sense to us. It's like, okay, you don't know if you're going to find treasure until you find the treasure, but you got to go out there with confidence. You got to know where you're going. How does that work? And I've always said anybody who's confident enough to put boots on the ground has confidence in their solve and thinks they know where the treasure is. Everybody goes out there thinking they know where the treasure is. And the person who eventually finds it isn't going to be any different. So, it really doesn't make any sense to me. It's Fenn speak. It's promotional speech. It's keeping the troops, happy and involved and in the chase, that kind of thing. That's what I think a lot of what Forrest says is the purpose behind it, I think. So that's my opinion anyway. Sometimes I think maybe he doesn't remember what he said in the past and has a little trouble keeping his story straight, So, and I'm better than I do, Dale, but a lot better. I've never met him. So, what do you think?
I agree with you 100%. And I believe the confidence part is really what he's saying is you got to have a solution before you go out there. You just can't walk out and expect to find it. You need a solution. But he's encouraged us to have a solution many times before we start out. And I think that was really what his intention was. You're just not going to find it. You're not going to trip over it. It's not going to be found by accident. I think that's just another way of saying that same thing.
So you can't just stop the car at some random point on the road, walk out into the woods and find it. You got to have a plan.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. You can't stop at the nearest home of Brown and start looking.
And the question is, what gives you confidence then? What is that?
Or certainty. We're not talking about confidence. Yeah. He said one will go with confidence. The one who finds it will go with confidence, but we're talking about one will have certainty in the location beforehand. Sorry, Decall,
and no, you're not. But many people have figured out, presumably, where warm water's hauled, if that is indeed the first clue that he's talking about. And so if many have figured out where warm water's hauled, that's impressive. And sort of, he's kind of saying it that maybe it is obvious based on something. For some reason, there are many people at this similar where warm water's hauled. And so I say all the time, if you have a very unique warm water's halt, you're probably in the wrong spot. Because how in the world do many people have that figured out?
That's right.
And then I might as well say right now, my philosophy is simple, that the Thrill the Chase was written. First was the poem, then Thrill the Chase. And then so somewhere in there is enough hints and clues and ideas to get us to the correct solve. And that's supposedly what our confidence rests on. I doubt it rests on scrapbooks. I doubt it rests on his YouTube video. I think it must rest somewhere, the confidence that we have in Thrill the Chase, the book, because God forbid he could have keeled over at day 2 of the chase, and all we have is the poem and the book for reference to kind of guide our search to. And I've always thought that, okay, that does give a little more credence to the Yellowstone idea as possibly, as likely being a part of the solve, because I asked the question to people, including Mike Davis here, what's better, confidence in a solution that aligns up perfectly with the poem, or a solution that lines up with the poem and the book Thrill the Chase? And then I guess there is a problem, because how does it line up? Everything lines up with the book, and everything in the world lines up with the poem in our own special way, So how do we find the truth? I guess that's the conundrum.
Oh, you gotta give credit to Mike for his one question that he asked to Forrest Fenn years ago, like 4 years ago. Does any specialized knowledge required, or is there any specialized knowledge required to solve this? And Forrest Fenn said no specialized knowledge is required to solve this. And I think he said something about geography, and I'm totally going to butcher that, but I think that was a great question by Mike, and that's why I love picking Mike's brain and being a part of Harry's and being close to him, because he's got a great mind for this.
I'm taking him up on that too. I've recently acquired a textbook on physical geography. I'm going to get a comprehensive knowledge of geography under my belt.
Right.
But I think too, he has a different idea what confidence means than what we think it means. You're talking to a fighter pilot, a combat hardened fighter pilot, a guy who with confidence went out there knowing that he was going to come back every time. A guy, that didn't mean he was coming back every time, but he had confidence that he was. He was sure he was. Being confident is part of the game. I'm a competent and confident pilot. I'm going to come back.
But what breeds that confidence? You make a great point, Dale, but what breeds that confidence in Forrest Fenn? And he talks about this in My War for Me, in my opinion. What bred that confidence in that fighter pilot that he knew he was going to come home after every mission?
Yeah, I don't know that Forrest was like that as a child, so I'm going to rule that out. But I will say that I have spent in and around an awful lot of time. Oh, okay, not like a lifer or something, but I have spent a lot of time around pilots, and it's a common trait of pilots. Pilots, that's just drilled into them. They're cocky, they're confident people.
Yeah.
But where do they get that confidence? Where do they get that cockiness and that confidence? What does it come from?
Well,
I don't know if it's something that kind of person, that kind of cocky, confident person is drawn to being a pilot, or if it's something they get in their training. Because, I'm engaged to be married to a lovely lady who's a former pilot. And I can tell you, she's like that. She's confident. She will take on anything and have absolute confidence that she can handle it. And she does. And it's amazing. She constantly amazes me with her confidence and her ability to just take on the biggest challenge like it's nothing, and I think a lot of pilots, like Dale says, are like that. And I don't know if it's something in the training or if it's just that kind of person is drawn to being a pilot.
You nailed it on the head. It comes from training. It comes from practice. It comes from repetition and going through that. And Forrest Fenn talks about that specifically in My War for Me. And what does he say? Every night before he went to bed when he was in Vietnam, what did he go through in his mind? He went through his bailout procedures. And if the man hadn't gone through those bailout procedures every night in his mind and practicing and knowing those steps that he had to take, when the time that it mattered, to know those bailout procedures, which he happened to have that time, he got shot down. If he wouldn't have gone through that training, he would not have the confidence to do that. And I think that that's what I was trying to get at, is it was his training and his repetition in his mind that gave him that confidence. It's not cockiness. Cockiness only comes from confidence. Some people misinterpret one's cockiness, or one's confidence as cockiness is what I'm trying to say. I mean,
it's not cockiness if you can do it,
Exactly. Thank you very much. Yeah. Exactly. And he's cocky and confident because he could do it, because he practiced his bailout procedures in his mind every night before he went to bed.
Well, it seemed like he showed the same kind
I got on a tangent there.
Seemed like he had the same kind of confidence in business. Business, you're owing a lot of money to a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons, and being able to keep the money flowing and having that sort of instead of bailing out or giving up, he just doubles down and finds the money and pays his bills. And, in fact, it's so impressive what he did with his different projects and, the way he made his fortune.
Can I
want to circle back? Go ahead, Dale. Go ahead.
Just one short other point about confidence and cockiness. As a pilot, you've got 1,000 people that work on a base. You've got 120 people in your squadron. Their whole purpose, their whole existence is to make sure that pilot gets up in the air that day and drops bombs on the target. That's their whole purpose. They're there to support that pilot. You can't help but live in that kind of environment and not have cockiness and confidence.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. Very good point. And they go through a rigorous training and everything to isolate those people and put them in that position. And you have to somewhat support their, I hate to say it, but their ego and keep those guys on point. You can't fill those guys with negativity, I would imagine. I mean, I'm not a pilot, never really been around many pilots. So, Mike, did you have something to say?
Yeah, and then he goes through this whole experience in the Air Force, and then he comes back to the U.S. He's discharged, and he goes into business. Well, he's got all this cockiness, call it that, confidence, whatever. And, suddenly, he doesn't have to worry about people shooting at him or hunting him in the jungle, but he's still got all his confidence and cockiness, and he can apply that to the business world and become a great success at it then. He's got a lot more going for him than the average guy probably in that department.
Yeah,
he can go into a meeting with, guys in 3-piece suits who are worth millions of dollars, and it's like it's nothing to him because at least they're not shooting at it,
They're not a 4-star general who I just asked to fly his plane, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to touch on this subject really quick, and I want to go to a really quick, let's see if I can share my screen. I'm going to probably totally mess this up real quick. Here it is. I don't know. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is this goes back to Mysterious Writings, and this was a question that was asked back in 2000, I believe 15. And the question was asked, and this relates to this kind of this a little bit of what we believe is a contradiction a little bit, if you want to say. But the question was, Forrest, you have stated that several searches correctly identified the first 2 clues in your poem. could you tell us how many searchers, to your knowledge, have correctly identified the first clue correctly? Thanks, $49. And Forrest Fenn responded, no, 49. I cannot tell you how many searchers have identified the first clue correctly, but certainly more than several. So some people have correctly identified it, more than several. I cannot imagine anyone finding the treasure without first identifying the starting point. Although many seem to be preoccupied with later clues, to me, that's just expensive folly. So what I find interesting about this question, and this is just me, and this could be my confirmation bias reading into this, is that 49 asked him, you know, that there's people have identified the first two, and then he says, to your knowledge, how many identified the first clue correctly? So there's a separation between the first and the second clue. And Forrest Fenn responds in like, where he says, you know, several have identified the first clue correctly. But then he goes on to say, I cannot imagine anyone finding the treasure without a first identifying the starting point. So my mind gets thinking about, is there a separation between the first clue and the second clue that you cannot have the correct starting point with just the first clue? Because if we go back to the questions with Phil Bayman and Steve R about, you know, can one go with confidence if all they know is somewhere in the mountains north of Santa Fe and begin it where warm waters halt? And Forrest Fenn responds no to both of those, and then talks about ingredients and then the bigger picture and everything else. So I think that, you know, is it possible, and I'm going to stop sharing here, guys, and you guys can find this, and if you can't find it, I'll try and put the link in the description below. I'm going to stop sharing here. But my question is, and it goes back to this whole thing about Forrest Fenn saying, you know, one can be or have certainty in the location. And is this the location, the general area, or maybe the state that the treasure rests in, but still not know for certain what or where warm waters halt is? So if one can have certainty in the correct state, whether you believe that's Wyoming and that region is in fact Yellowstone in itself, and if you believe what warm waters halt is a geothermal feature, you may have the location down with certainty. Now, that could be a ton of coincidences piled on top of each other that tell you that Yellowstone is the correct general area. But you may not know which geothermal feature is in fact the correct warm water salt. You could be, you know, Old Faithful is it, the Mud Pots are it, or Ojo Caliente, or the Lone Star Geyser. You don't know which one is the correct warm water salt, but you have a lot of certainty or confidence that Yellowstone is the correct general area. So is it possible that one could have certainty or a high level of confidence in the general area, but not yet know for certain what warm waters halt is until you find the treasure? So you find the treasure, then you may know, well, it was this or that. So Dale, I see you raising your hand, and you obviously want to respond to that. What do you think?
That's how my whole search has always operated. I've always felt.
Oh my God, we're both wrong then. Forget
it. Okay. No,
I'm sorry.
Honestly, that's true. I believe in a region, and then I looked for how I could identify where warm waters halted after I got there. But I truly believe that Yellowstone is my region, not Yellowstone.
Yeah, region.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%, and I'm confident.
So it goes back to that Jennifer London video, you know, or not Jennifer London video. It goes back to the one question about reverse engineering warm waters halt. If you were certain about, you know, the home of Brown, you know, why would you even be concerned about what warm waters halt was? You know, your friends could share some gas money for the take, you know, or whatever he says in there. So is it possible that one may not know for certain what warm waters halt is, but could still have certainty in the general area that the treasure rests in? Whether that comes from the subtle clues in the book or just your poem purist, pragmatic, you know, look at the poem itself. I don't know. I mean, it's just something to talk about.
And there's some bias too in that what we know today isn't what we knew in 2015. For instance, we didn't know for certain what the first clue was in 2015. We do now, so it's a little easier to make that connection.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Forrest Fenn is proud of his poem. He's proud of the his first clue, which is evidently where warm waters halt, because I think he repeatedly keeps drawing attention to that. You got to figure out the first clue. You got to figure out the first clue over and over. Broken record. But also, he says that many people and more than several people have figured out the first clue, where warm waters halt. So evidently some of us or some people or someone is doing it right. And it almost seems like it's an obvious answer, but he can't tell us that we have it right, of course. I've always thought, okay, in order to that finding the first clue, and we might as well use my example, Madison Junction. In my line of thinking, okay, something is parallel or similar or just alike Madison Junction. So we find the beginning and the end in a very similar circumstance. Like his quote, I forget that main quote that is always brought up. We'll find the end and realize you can quote it off the top of your head, Sean, but basically we're going to find
T.S. Eliot. That's not his quote. You're talking about T.S. Eliot.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And I believe that's why he keeps drawing attention to the first clue, because the first clue symbolizes and points to the last clue. Simple logic. I don't know if I found that structure in the poem to validate my ideas about halt and cease being the beginning and the end, and being omegas also. It's just my theory, my unproven theories as usual. But I think there is some significance to the beginning and the end, and there's something alike to be discovered. So if we did have the correct warm waters halt, any one of us, we might find similarities in the final resting place for the treasure chest.
Yeah. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think, like Decall said, at least a few people must have come up with the right warm waters halt. Apparently, according to Forrest, some have. I mean, I have a whole long list of possibilities I've accumulated over the years. So, something on that list may be right. It's possible. I think the problem becomes, okay, we think we've got the right warm waters halt, and then maybe we need to start the boots on the ground there. I think a lot of people try to go a little too far. I think they're not paying attention to the whole little girl from India part of it, and they're trying to create an entire solve, before they do boots on the ground. And then when we get there, they go off on some tangent, rather than trying to find. Yeah, me too. Rather than trying to find the rest of the clues on the ground. That's sure. A theory I have. So I think, okay, a few people have found the right warm waters halt, but they haven't applied the correct technique to solve the rest of the poem. Mm-hmm. That's a possibility.
Absolutely.
Very good point. Very good point. Yep. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why they correctly solved the first two clues, but in Forrest Fenn's own words, they went right on past the treasure chest, or they went right on past the other 7 clues. He said that in a couple of different ways, and that could be, again, our own confirmation bias, our own, unwillingness to try and force fit our interpretation or our ideas upon the poem, and not, Forrest Fenn's. And like you say, very poignantly, Mike, not Forrest Fenn's ideas or not his interpretation. We're force fitting our own ideas. We're not,
right.
We don't understand the correct method to solve this. And that, again, ties back into why this is so difficult. We don't know the correct methodology, potentially.
People get these ideas in their head, and they get out there and they've got tunnel vision, and they're looking for confirmation of this ideas, and they're walking by stuff probably that they would see in their peripheral vision if they didn't have this tunnel vision. That's probably going to lead them to be on the correct path. So
it is amazing.
We get so excited. We want to rush out there to our search area without looking at everything around it. Sorry,
And
Call. Go
I
ahead.
don't say I'm as guilty of that as anybody else.
I'm guilty.
Yeah.
Completely guilty.
Yeah.
I do think it's amazing how that pretty much every single person in this game has a different solve. So even if 40 people have the correct warm waters halt, they all have a different solve. Some go south, some go down, some go all sorts of directions looking for a creek to go up or down, or
But even if Forrest Fenn told us, and I think I've mentioned this before, even if Forrest Fenn told us what the correct interpretation of what warm waters halt is, we would still all be in 4 different states. We'd be like, well,
Yep.
I know it's in Montana because my confirmation bias kicks your confirmation bias of New Mexico or Montana or Colorado or it would just be,
yeah.
we
Hey,
still
what-
wouldn't know.
What about,
Because there's many places where warm waters halt.
is there
Go
any
ahead, Dale.
is there any traction at all in the concept that Forrest said that first about, several people being close to, or went right by the first 2 clues? Is
They
there
didn't
any,
know it.
right, is there any traction at all in considering where people were looking very early in the search
Oh, yeah.
compared to where people look today? I mean, we don't know who was writing Forrest and what they were saying, but if you look at the blogs from back then, and if you see, nobody was looking up in
He keeps
Glacier.
trying to find the 200-foot guy.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
Okay,
trying
Dale,
to find him.
if we try and research your website on where people were searching, that might take us longer than it takes anybody to find this treasure. We can't search your website. It's so hard.
No, it's
But
easy
no,
to do
it's
that.
dead. Okay.
Well, you go back to the poem number 1.
It's harder to figure out your website than it is the poem.
Oh, you've been waiting for a year.
You
to say
admitted that. You admitted that in the last time we had you on here.
Well, only because I couldn't figure it out myself.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm sorry to knock you on that one, but yeah, everybody was searching, even back in the early stages when your site was really gaining traction, you were doing really good with it. It was the first thing out there, 2012, 2013. We had searchers everywhere looking, and trust me, I've gone through that and researched as much as I can, and it's probably not even enough.
I'll tell you who.
How do you find? Who do you
who I-
follow? State.
I'll tell you who I think was very, very close back in the earliest days of the chase. I think it was Stephanie.
Yeah. And
Only
that,
because she searched everywhere.
yeah, that would be impossible.
She had the money to
trace.
do it. She had the money and the time. Sure.
That would be impossible to retrace all of her steps. She has been everywhere. Holy crap.
No, we're just talking about the first year and a half. And it's pretty easy to know where she was back then. And the reason I say that is because, she's said this a number of times. Back in the early days when we were just beginning to search, Forrest would communicate with us. You'd write and say, Forrest, hey, I'm out again today, and I'm looking over here. And Forrest would say, you're just the kind of guy who could find my chest. He would encourage us back then. And so, if you wrote Forrest a line, you got a reply. And Stephanie was really quite big into that. And she was out there looking around, and she was writing him back and forth. I think that if you could, peel back Stephanie's, forehead and look in that brain, you'd find where warm waters halt. You'd find a lot of other crap too, but
Well, I have tried to ask Stephanie if
You might not find anything.
if she's been to my area. It's hard to pinpoint where she's. I wonder, do you think she was predominantly Wyoming, Montana in the beginning?
in the beginning she was looking in Colorado.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
and she was also looking in around Taos.
I
ran into her there.
sure.
Like at the airport.
The Denver airport?
What did we say? What was it? It was at home base, they gave her her own parking place because every time she went out looking, she had to buy a new shovel because she couldn't take one on the plane. And so they were so thrilled to see her walk into home base and buy another shovel.
Gets expensive.
I'm not gonna.
She should have just hid the. Well, we like Stephanie. She's great.
Yeah.
So I think the whole point that we were trying to make tonight, and I think what we can somewhat agree upon, at least the panel members here tonight, as far as why is Forrest Fenn's poem so difficult to solve, is that we have absolutely no confirmation. There's no roadsides out there. Forrest Fenn is not telling anybody. He's not giving out any, confirmations to anybody that you got him solved. Now, he may throw those confirmations out in a scrapbook or in a book or something that you think that all your tons of coincidences add up to that. And you may be the one. You may be right. I mean, somebody has to be right. Somebody's tons of coincidences stacked on top of each other has to be right. So we're not trying to knock anybody's imagination and going into all the scrapbooks or going into all the images, going into all the interviews, going into all the books and looking at all these things. We're not trying to knock anybody because, Decall, Dale, or Mike, none of us are authorities on the chase. We're just having fun. We're talking about this with you guys. So you might be the one that has a ton of coincidences stacked up that add up. So I think what we can all agree upon is that there is absolutely no confirmation and there is no consensus among the search community on absolutely anything. We can't even agree on what the 9 clues are. Even between two poem purists in the room cannot agree on what the 9 clues are. I mean, we can laugh about that all we want, but it's true.
And I don't even know that there is no confirmation.
Yeah.
I don't know that Forrest has never, ever said to somebody that's
You're right.
the right one.
Yeah.
You're right about anything. Yeah, we would love to know. He says he hasn't. He really says that he has not, that he would never do that. Even the person that's close now, he would never tell them. He's made it pretty clear. I mean, so we got to take him at his word that he would not reveal it.
I agree with you. I don't think he's done it recently, but I think in the beginning.
But would you?
I think.
But would you want that confirmation? I'm honestly, would any of us?
Yeah.
I mean, we joke about it. We all want that confirmation, but do we want to earn this? Do we want to have it handed to us or do we want to earn this? In my opinion, I want to earn it. I mean, I want to know without a doubt that if I find this treasure that I matched with the architect of this poem on my own, that I never had any kind of him saying, Sean, you're right, it's here. Or, you got this right. I don't want that. I want to know that when I walk up to that treasure chest and unearth it, that I did it on my own, that David and I worked hard on this and we worked on it on our own. I don't know if I really want some kind of confirmation from Forrest. We all talk about, let's rule out a state. Let's do this. When I'll talk about this, we're going to hit on this next. We want an explosion in the chase that breaks this thing open and finishes it before, you guys passes his veil.
You guys are friggin' saints. I'll take it any way I can get it. If he wants to tell me I was right about something, not that he ever
totally not. Mitzi's gonna take that video of you saying I'm gonna take it anywhere I want it, and she's gonna totally twist that on you. I feel sorry for you, Dale.
I just want Forrest to tell me that I'm wrong. I don't even need to hear it.
Just tell me I'm wrong.
Please tell me I'm not within 50 miles at all. I'll be clapping my hands for joy. I can't. Please, Forrest.
Decall, you're not even 50 miles. You're not even within 50 miles.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
My confirmme bias kicks your confirmation bias's ass. You're not even within 50 miles.
Forrest, when you call me tonight, go ahead and tell me.
He's going to call Dale tonight and go, none of you are within 50 miles.
Yeah, perfect. I'll be so happy. Yeah, I'll take that. Heck yeah.
See, he can't say that to me because he doesn't know where I'm searching. See, I've kept my distance from him. We don't talk. So he doesn't know where I'm searching. Smart. And it's like Sean says, I want to earn it. I don't want him to give it to me. I don't want him to give me any hints. I want to match wits with him and I want to beat him in his own game. And I don't want anybody to say, he helped you, he helped you. No. I want to do it myself.
All right, Mike, if you had a switch that you could push in front of you and the switch was lighted up, you're correct or not, well, you're not correct or nothing. Wouldn't you flip the switch right now? An imaginary switch.
You were breaking up a little bit. A switch that does what?
That just says my solve is incorrect. And that's it. That's all you get.
Oh, well, I always assume my solve's incorrect, so it never seems to make.
Okay, so guys, I'm gonna segue really quick into something that's been a big kind of hubbub this last week between Harry's forum, Thor, and also on Chase Chat, which is and on Dal Neitzel's side, on your side as well. But Dale, this week you responded to one of your posters named Joe, and you made a pretty much a long post that's really caused a lot of talk within all the community. Now, I'm gonna read this, and then I'm gonna ask you to kind of make some comments on this, Dale. So we're gonna put you on the spot here. Let me get over to this. I'm gonna read this. So you're not gonna see my screen, but I'm gonna read this verbatim, and you guys can find this on Dale's site. You can also find it on Harry's Chase forum, but this is it. And he says, Joe, Forrest used that 350K number more than once. And wasn't it quite a while ago when he used that number, ? If the blogs are any indication, or perhaps I should say, if this blog is any indication, then I would say that interest peaked last year or the year before. If true, this is good news for those who want less competition while searching, but perhaps not such good news for those selling Chase-related t-shirts and Magic 8 balls. Okay, Dale. I would also say that a decline in searchers is inevitable over time, given that Forrest is decreasing his involvement in media interviews, which stimulate publicity and therefore awareness. In the long game, folks need a real or imagined carrot at the end of the stick to keep the game moving forward. The carrot seems to be harder to imagine after nearly 9 years, at least for the masses. There will always be an elite group who clearly see the carrot and move forward. But for most, the trek becomes tiresome after 9 years of no success by hundreds of thousands of searchers. As in war, grunts get weary. After years and years in the same trench, no movement, no momentum, no encouragement. There are always a few new starry-eyed recruits who believe that they can get the job done, and the elders encourage them. But without a new carrot, the new also lose their way and become unable to move forward. So what happens next? An explosion, I suspect, something new and different that will capture the attention of searchers and reinvigorate their imaginations. It has to happen. I am listening. Dale, those are your words, and this has caused quite a stir within the Chase community. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to ask you. Yeah.
See you. Goodbye.
All right.
So Dale, I'm going to put you on the spot, and I want you to comment on your own statement. What do you mean by an explosion has to happen? And I have to comment really quick. I agree on the fact of war weariness. I think after 9 years, this whole talk tonight is about why is this thing so difficult to solve? There's no confirmation. We have no anything. None of us know anything for certain. So please make comment on this. We want to get your comments. Go. You got the floor.
I don't know a damn thing. Okay. I just feel like momentum is starting to decline, that we need something to put momentum back, to move us forward a little bit. I don't know what that's going to be, but I think it has to be something new, and it has to be pretty powerful, whatever it is. A new blog on the scene isn't going to help.
True.
It would have to be something big and different and exciting for all of us, and that would cause more people to get interested. It would renew our interest, and it would push us forward. And I use the word explosion. You know, God, please. I'm sorry I used the word explosion. I probably
the FBI is coming to get you now.
I know.
Homeland Security is knocking on the door.
I got an email from Forrest shortly afterwards. And
oh boy.
He said, Forrest says, Dale, a bunch of people are writing me now and telling me that an explosion is coming and that you're responsible for it. Can you please let me know in advance when this explosion is going to come so that I can protect, I can't remember what he said, the birds or something like that. And oh God. I'm sorry, and other people have suggested. No, they haven't suggested. They've accused me of saying that Forrest said an explosion was going to come, and I didn't. Those were my words, not Forrest's. Forrest never said there needs to be an explosion. That's Dale's ridiculous idea. There needs to be something new. I believe that.
Well, let me say
the chat room is saying that the treasure is booby trapped now. Everybody's saying way to go, Dale. The treasure's booby trapped.
It's surrounded by claymores.
He's gonna know. He's gonna know when the treasure's found.
But let me ask you this, Dale. I mean, really, the only person who can blow this up short of the person finding the chest is Forrest. Were you kind of asking him to give us something new? Was that the point of it all?
Well, I think it's regrettable that Forrest is not going to be able to do interviews anymore, and that Forrest is not going to be able to comment on blogs anymore, and that he's backing away. He's not going to listen to me, for God's sake, but
apparently he did.
I think he listened to what other people were writing him about what I said. He doesn't listen to me, and I think with Forrest drawing himself out, and he said this before, and he's come back before, and I hope that's the situation this time too. But if he disappears, that's just a real negative for the whole chase, and I would like to see him come back. And I think that would be an explosion, would be to have Forrest come back and say something to encourage us all and get us all motivated. Although, please, not one of those backward bicycles again. Christ, that was horrible. And if I have to listen to one more explanation of what a Coriolis is, I think I'll go crazy. But,
yeah, you're right. That's amazing, Dale. Yeah.
But aside from that, I would love Forrest to come back in and stay inside.
Right.
He's going to be involved. It's in his heart to.
It's not a bystander.
He's threatened to be less active before. He just put out a scrapbook. He's obviously reading the blog since you posted, and is evidently concerned. If his heart wasn't in it, he wouldn't care the result of your blog. He wouldn't care if you said explosion, because he knows he wouldn't be doing a damn thing about it. But he
you would have said we need an explosion, or Mike Davis would have said we need an explosion,
nothing.
Or any other searcher would have said that, short of like Cynthia or somebody else.
Yeah.
Crickets.
We wouldn't. Forrest would have been like, "What are you guys talking about?" Like it was Dale says explosion on there, and Forrest is like, "Okay, I got 50 emails, Dale. What the hell are you talking about? I got to go over and read your blog and figure out what's going on now."
Actually, Dale, I think it's good advice. You said, Forrest, we need a little explosion here. Come on, and I'm saying the same thing. Forrest, come on, we need a little love, a little explosion, a little full page ad from the Forrest Fenn here. All right, come on. Let's put out another full page ad, Forrest.
They're so desperate.
We've got enough noise. We've got enough noise out there. I've told Forrest Fenn that we've got enough information. We have everything we need.
That's right. Every word out of his mouth just leads to new rabbit holes, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my God, exactly. Yeah.
Wait.
Or every word out of a Dale's mouth about explosions. We got people talking in here. What happened to the atomic bomb that Forrest Fenn had in Vietnam? You know, now or in Germany, you know. Oh my God, he signed for it, but he never returned it. There goes another rabbit hole.
The chest is sitting on top of it. Yeah.
Speaking of chess, Dale, you mentioned something, and we were talking about this in the, you know, the talk before we went live. But didn't you mention something about somebody making fake chess? And Forrest commented on that or something. So mention that. Let's talk about that real quick.
So Chris, the guy who takes care of all the technical stuff on the blog, and also the guy who puts the ads on the blog, don't write me about the damn ads on the blog. Nothing to do with them. That's Chris. So anyway, Chris wrote me to say, hey, this guy wants to put an ad on the blog for a lookalike chest that he's selling. What do you think? And I went, holy cow, I don't want a lookalike chest out there, or, you know, 100 lookalike chests out there. We have enough wacky people looking for this thing. Somebody will undoubtedly, or 100 people will undoubtedly take this lookalike chest that they bought for $9.99 or whatever, and put it under a bush, take a picture of it, and say they found the chest. And
it's gonna happen anyway.
No, I don't want that ad on the, but let me. And then
somebody
he wrote me back. He said, well, they say they've been in touch with Forrest, and Forrest is all for it. Okay, well, let me write Forrest and see what he thinks about this. So I wrote Forrest a note, and Forrest wrote back and said, yes, he was aware of that, and it didn't look anything like the real chest. There was no chance that anybody was going to mistake it for the real chest. But he said, you know, all this commercialization, he didn't use the word commercialization. He may have, anyway, all this commercialization around the treasure hunt is beginning to get weary.
Merchandising.
So, yeah, he could have used that word. And I agree with him, but then I look at my blog and I see pop-up ads all the time. You got to move things to the left and right so I can read the damn comments everybody's making. And I think, you know, what can I say about ads? What can I say about merchandising? What can I say about this? So,
but isn't that part of the, like you quote, the war weariness of the chase? You know, as people, we have no confirmation, everything else, people tend to just find ways to, like you say, commercialize this thing and not worry about trying to find the treasure. They're just more
people trying to suck money out of our pockets. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's buyer beware, you know, like Forrest says in the whole, you know, experience Skinner thing. You know, they got me with the oldest trick in the book. It wasn't how special that thing was. It was how special they could make me think it was. So it's like that toothbrush holder. It's like everything else that we put out there. The doggy doo-doo. It wasn't how special the doggy doo-doo was. It came from Forrest Fenn, so it was special, you know. $5,600 for a toothbrush holder from Forrest. I mean, okay, Shiloh, good job. You know, you got some more money to buy another kayak and go down the river. I don't know what you want to do, but okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. Okay. You know, fine. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry I agree. I'm sorry to see the commercialization. And I know I sound like a heretic when I say that because I have so many ads on our blog. And I don't know. I wish they would all go away, but I like Chris and I like what he does with the blog and I like how he maintains it. And that's his payment. He derives his income. Yeah,
but you know, Forrest seems to enjoy this though. Okay. And this commercialization, I mean, he's more and more immortal with these coins and with these T-shirts and with these fake treasure chests. It only promotes his end game even further. And I don't see him fighting against it. In fact, you see him meeting with people, talking about these ideas and these products and these different things.
But the point is he doesn't care about it. Again, you know, he who dies with more than $50 is a failure. I mean, why did he tell Douglas Preston that, you know, hey, I hope you make $1 million with this book idea and this movie idea. You know, just send me tickets to the Grammys or the Emmys or whatever, you know, or the Oscars. You know, he didn't care about the money. He's not in this for money. You know, I mean, he's got enough money. We obviously all know that. You know,
Well, he's certainly
but he's
entertained
also said
ideas.
in the 6 questions, I think it was from 2017, that he had said there's many people that are not blinded by the treasure's value. There's many avid searchers out there that are not blinded by the treasure's value. You know, to each their own. I mean, I guess if that's what people want to do, I guess I shouldn't keep my mouth shut about it. I guess it is what it is. People can do their own thing.
I see Forrest Fenn still promoting his game his way. I don't think he minds these other products at all. I mean, he's approved Jenny Kyle's coins. He's approved Mike Cowling's 2 different coins. He's approved. He has these stick figure contests, pet contests, crazy hat contests. So why not?
Well, there've also been T-shirts.
There's a contest to find a treasure chest too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's been T-shirts and maps and other things that Forrest has had a hand in helping people, you know, set up and sell. So
it's something I've seen from the very beginning of the chase, and Forrest is very good at this, and he gets other people to promote his chase, and you do a very good job of it, Dale, promoting his chase for him, and Stephanie did for a long time, and you know, Harry's doing it, and Jenny's doing it, and K-Pro's doing it, and Mike Cowlings is doing it, and you know, they're all doing his work for him, basically. You know, he's got the whole Tom Sawyer thing going here. They're all painting the fence for him, and you know, he's got a good thing going. You know,
well, you make it
one or the other.
But Mike, you make it sound like a negative thing.
I'm not saying it's negative. I'm not saying it's negative. I mean, it's. I call it the chase. You know, this chase secondary market. There's a lot of people who are involved in this chase secondary market. Okay, they're not finding the treasure, but they're getting something out of it. They're getting fame. They're getting a few bucks. They're getting whatever. You know, and it all of it in the end just helps promote the chase. So it's all doing Forrest's work, which is why I don't see him objecting to any of it.
Yeah,
you know, he's not saying, "Oh, you can't put my likeness on that."
But at the same time, it's getting, you know, it's still getting. We're promoting the chase, and we're still getting people out there, and what we assume is his real motive behind this, which is getting people out in the wilderness and smelling the sunshine, and being out in the woods, you know, and kicking over a log. I mean, that's, you know, his quote unquote purpose for this. It's not the purpose of somebody to just go out there in 1 week and find his treasure. You know, it's a purpose of trying to get people off the couch, off their texting machines, and get out there. If that's what you truly believe it is. There's the people that believe it's a hoax. There's the people believe that all kinds of other things out there. But I still want to believe, like Decall Thomas talks about, that God exists, that the treasure exists, that I have that faith that it's out there, and I'm still having a good time. I still believe I could find it. Sure, every one of us believes that we could find it, and one of us eventually, someday, may be that person, whether that's this weekend or 1,000 years from now. You know, one of us eventually will find this thing. But I still have that faith. It's more fun to believe that it is real, that it is true, that it is out there. You know, it's still a 50-50 shot. It could be a hoax, could not be. I choose to believe that it is real, that it is out there, that it exists, and it is possible to find it. Even the fact that we have no confirmation, no certainty, nothing out there, that it's still possible that one of us can find it. And
Amen.
I'm having fun. I'm having fun.
Yep.
Absolutely having fun. So
Yeah,
anyway,
too. It's fun.
Do you guys have any last words? Let's wrap this thing up. We're coming up on an hour and 40 minutes here, 150 minutes. I want to wrap this thing up. So
I have something about Australian TV.
Okay.
So I was contacted the other day by an Australian TV outfit. They're coming here in June, and they are looking for people who are searching in Colorado to interview and possibly go out on their search with them. So if anybody is searching in Colorado and wouldn't mind hanging out with an Australian TV crew, just send me an email from the address on my blog, and I'll give your email to them and they'll contact you. So if you're searching in Colorado, going to be around in June, don't mind being on TV, let me know.
Yeah, and everybody knows Dal Neitzel's website. That's Dale at Madison Junction is where warm water's hauled for certain.com.
Boom!
Total joke. You guys should know what Dale Neitzel's email address is. If not, I'll put it in the link below. Decall, you got any last words?
No, check out my solve if you want, fentreasure.com, Facebook/Decall. Friend me, call me, write me, but not too often because my wife will get ticked off.
Mike, you got anything?
I was going to talk about the whole subjectivity of all the different words in the poem, but maybe we'll save that for another show. That's we've gone
Absolutely.
on for quite a while. But
That's a great show.
Check out my website. There's a section on treasure hunting on it, as well as a lot of other stuff. And
it's mdpub.com.
Yep, mdpub.com. And it's been fun. It's been good to finally be on the same panel with Dale. I've never met Dale, never spoken to him before. So this is great. He's a good guy. He's a fun guy. So
that's right.
You disappeared off my blog. I remember when you were there years
Thanks to
years
Goofy.
ago.
Goofy banned
Goofy.
banned me years ago. Now, actually, I've come back. Apparently, I got unbanned at some point, and I have posted a few times, but I mainly just hang out. I'm like a one blog guy. When I was on Chase Chat, it was all Chase Chat. Now I'm on Harry's. I just post on Harry's. I don't go out and post lots of other places. Who has time to keep up with all of them?
Yeah.
Anyway, guys,
that's what I used to watch Sean's videos for his weekend update, because he could wait all his time on all those other videos and blogs, and then I could just get like this executive summary,
Quick update. Yeah, that's good.
All right. Well, guys, it's been a great panel tonight. We've had a lot of fun. We talked about, why the poem is so difficult to solve. We gave Dale Neitzel a hard time on his whole explosion thing tonight, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been, we got a little bit of talk about this whole fake chest that's floating out there, and Forrest Fenn's comment on that, and the commercialization of the chase, so to speak. But it's been a great show tonight. It was fun having you guys. I know we didn't get to recognize a lot of you guys in the chat room tonight. I apologize. That's my fault tonight, but it was great having you all in here tonight. We wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for you guys in the chat room. We'd just be talking to ourselves, which is pretty much kind of what we do. But if I didn't get to your guys' questions, please, post them in the comments below. Each one of us, Dale, Decall, and Davis, will all get a chance to look at them and hopefully respond in kind to those questions if we didn't get to them tonight. So post them in the comments after this goes back on Facebook, and we'll hopefully respond to those if we didn't catch them. So we appreciate you guys coming out tonight and joining us. It's been a lot of fun, and we will catch you all on the flip side. Have a good night. Hold on. We're out of here.